Any Cleveland Browns, Dallas Cowboy fans? You can leave the room. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, you can stay in the room. Yeah, baby, go Steelers. I want to thank you, first of all, for the one thing you can't get back, that's time. The time is the inelastic thing we all have that's the most valuable thing. And the time you extend to me is so appreciated, and with gratitude, I want to be able to give you that one thing or two things that you can take from here and that can make your time and the time with your loved ones more expansive, more rich, more joyful. Now, you won't agree with all, most, or some things I say, but to think about those things and to question those things is the curious gene that we all have. And if we follow the curious gene with interest and we explore on our own, we open those boundaries, those things that we think, and we can change the dynamic of our life by doing those things. You know, as I listen to the intro, it makes me sound really old, doesn't it? I think I should probably shorten that thing just a little bit. And what we can't agree on today is this. We all have, every one of us have fear. We each have our fears. They just vary by degree and they vary by nature. This is a fact. As babies, we had two fears. Two fears. The fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. Everything else we learned, thanks friends, peers, parents around the kitchen table, they were socially learned fears. And you know what two of the biggest ones are? The two dominant fears? We all fear change. Change is uncertainty, and our brain, like candy, craves certainty. And we all fear loss. We don't want to lose something. But you see, we have to agree on this before we move forward. To live is to risk. We can't stay in a bubble, hermetically sealed in a vacuum of what we think is safe. We can't. Nature will not allow for that vacuum. Nature will not support stasis. We have to move. If we are not moving forward, we are in retrograde. And we move forward by questioning, thinking, and most importantly, doing. That's the essence, the nature of this thing we call life. You know, I'm reminded when I speak of life of a lion captured from the plains of the savannas, big, magnificent, bold, beautiful. The lion was captured and sequestered in the Atlanta Zoo. And after months, crowds gathered. This once magnificent beast sat in the corner, the essence of life seeping from his body. The lion died in captivity. You see, the lion's nature is to be free. Our nature is to fear. Our nature is to also share, cooperate, and grow together. And that is part of the way through the uncertainty of this thing, this beautiful thing we call life. You know, we can agree on this. It's a long way from Kane, PA. I grew up in a small town in northwest Pennsylvania, small as 3,500 people. It is, to this day, known as the coldest place, not only in Pennsylvania, man, in the nation. That's cold. If you don't think that was a driving impetus for me to get out of Pennsylvania and find my way to California, yeah, that was the driving impetus. That was one of the things I feared the most, is staying in that cold, shoveling snow 9 months out of the year. And believe this or not, this will come as some surprise after that long, glowing intro. Man, I was allergic to 4 letters, work. But you see, in my family, that's what you did. You worked. The father is a Pennsylvania state trooper, and the mother is a registered nurse, and both pillars of the community in their own way. They believed in work, and I didn't. As a kid, all I wanted to do was play football. All I wanted to do was hang out with my friends. Man, I wanted to sleep in on Saturdays. I just wanted to hang out and have fun. But every Saturday morning, there were lawnmowers going. My brother and I were I'm the oldest of four. We're in the lawn, no matter what. And I think my dad did a really good rain dance because you know what? That grass always grew. It was always growing. And there we were out there mowing. My sisters had to pick up rocks. Now, we didn't have money. We had hand-me-down cans from my uncle who, without labels, so we never knew what we were eating at any particular night. Some of the cans were, fruit cocktails, some were meat, maybe Dinty Moore stew if we were lucky. And my mother made a lot of pasta. She was Italian, made a whole lot of pasta. But we never knew what we didn't have. And around that table was joy. And no matter what the fear of the unknown was, what would we do the next day? How would we survive that next day? We had each other. And that bond endures to this day. To this day. Now, the one thing about Cain, and the one thing about that type of environment, is a lot of people limit themselves to the ceilings in their house. And the ceilings are generally very short, very narrow ways through a house. And we don't believe we can because we don't want to try. We don't think we can because we might fail. Well, I will tell you this. McGraw-Hill paid me to write a book on failure. They only pay people who are experts. Do you know how many times I had to fail to get somebody to say, here, we're going to pay you to write a book on it? A lot. Now, growing up in Cain, the work for me was to try to find a way out of school. So I was a below C student. I was a really terrible student. I didn't want to learn. I didn't want to go to college. I didn't want to do anything except play around. Well, when most of my friends went off to school, the ones that remained stayed behind and worked at the local factory. I was one of those people who worked at the local factory. Now, there's something inside of me, and there's something inside of each of you. There is a gene. You know that gene we have that wants to be safe? There's also a gene that wants to express itself in cooperation, in being singular, in being significant in some way. There is that in us. So we're always at a struggle between how do we stay safe, how do we stay in this bubble of certainty, and then how do we express ourselves in some way to cooperate, collaborate, share, and grow. How do we do that? It's something inside of you, no matter what you do. There is a small ember. And when you find the right fan to fan that ember, that flame grows to conflagration. That fire is what we call passion. You can feel it. It imbues. It comes from the pores. It oozes when you walk into a room. You can feel it on a person. You can feel when there are ashes. You can feel when there's fire. That, to me, agree or disagree, is the essence of life. To live it, to find it, you will walk through the crucible of this thing that is fear. And the fear I speak of is not danger. Danger is imminent threat from man, insect, reptile, now virus. But this fear is invisible. This fear is the florid product of our imagination on steroids, that believes the worst case is going to happen if we do something. The worst case is going to befall us. The worst thing that can happen, it's invisible, but it is the biggest barrier we first have to navigate before we ever find that oasis of certainty in the ocean of uncertainty. Well, I got my schooling. I got my fear. I got heavy doses of it on my first day walking up through the snow to that factory. My foreclosed future, what I thought would be the rest of my life, from a present that I surrendered. All I wanted to do was play. Now, I don't know if you have kids and maybe they're on the couch or they're downstairs playing all kinds of games we didn't have then. We were always outside. But I was one of those kids. And my mother packed me a brown lunch and she cried because she thought I was going to be the one that would take off and do great things, and she was so wrong. And that was the hardest day of my life, to feel her pain, to see that tear. And then to smell sawdust and lacquer at 7 a.m. So to come in here and smell coffee and to hear someone speak, yeah, it's kind of sometimes, maybe I don't know about this guy. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but I got to be here. But when you got to walk into a factory and smell that the first thing in the morning, that's a reality. That's a wake-up call for those who are ready to be awake. So here's what I learned. My first lesson in being that rebel and being resistant Well, son, you better get your blank together. Because if you don't, and if you don't start thinking, begging and crawling forward and finding a way or making a way out of here, this will be the rest of your life. So think about where you are now, no matter where you are. And it is not about the monetary aggrandizement. It is about the freedom of expression. It is about your chance to live this one life. And remember, time, that inelastic, most valuable, precious thing. It's time. The time to hug, the time to share, the time to live, the time to grow, the time to do these things together. We will never have this time again. My mother was my champion. She believed in me when others didn't. When everyone closed their book on me, she believed in me. She gave me a chance to go to school. I had to start at a junior college, and the long story short, I went from a junior college to a well-known college and then to another school for my master's degree. And when I came out, I thought the world owed me a living. I couldn't tie a tie, didn't have a suit. My mother bought me a suit, it was corduroy, it was brown. Couldn't cinch a tie, my brother did it for me. I moved into a one-bedroom with my brother in Richmond, Virginia. He was the ultimate son. He looked like classic GQ. He could wear the suits, he did the work, he was a good son. I just wanted to sit around and drink beer, hang out with my friends. I really didn't want to work. He said, Bill, you gotta get off my couch. You can't keep watching these Bonanza reruns and have Gun Will Travel. You got to get off my couch. You got to go and get a job. And I said, but what am I going to do? I went to school to be a manager. I got my MBA. That's what I'm going to do. He said, I don't know if you're going to start out in the corner office. Well, I thought the world owed me a C-suite. I mean, didn't it? Really? No, it didn't. He said, you're going to talk to this place called Management Recruiters. Now, I will tell you this. It is a really, 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 really poor candidate, that'd be me, who can't get placed by a real desperate recruiter. That was them. But he kicked me out of his office. He said, you're never going to make it. You're not going to make it in sales. You're not going to make it. I said, well, I don't want to be in sales. Come on, man. Well, good, you're not going to make it. Now I'm going to date myself now. I'm going to show you why that big long opening was pretty valid, okay? I got this thing that you've probably never seen it before. It's called the Yellow Pages, and I started going through those Yellow Pages, right? And I started calling all these numbers to see anybody that talked to me. And finally, this woman spoke to me, and I think she felt really sorry for me. She probably thought, man, that guy needs a lot of help. And she said, I got a really good opportunity for you. It's in sales. And I said, you don't understand. I don't want to be in sales. She said, you listen to me. If you don't get off that couch and get yourself a job, you're going back to that factory. Now, that scared me. So I got into sales. And that drove me to learn about people, because to survive, you had to learn about people. I learned the most important things with people. Where are you from? Talking about another person before I talked about myself. Finding out what it was of value to them and trying to become that value based on what they perceived and needed. And telling them, most important, what I wasn't before I ever told them what I could do for them. That changed the world for me. That changed the world. And I fell in love with the game. I fell in love with people. I fell in love with doing something where people would say, wow, thank you. I never looked at the monetary climb. I looked at, have I met the needs of that person? Have I done something to win the heart, to influence the mind in some way? And that changed the axis of my world. Now, at first, it was about me, because each of us have a core need. We have to be significant in our own way. The other need is love. The other need is we have to cooperate and we have to collaborate to move forward. We have to do that. But we also have to feel safe. And I feel safe, and I know where you are. To stick your head out into an environment where you could get it lopped off in rejection 1,000 times a week hurts until it doesn't. And no matter what you do, whether it's asking someone out on a date, whether it's going to a job interview, whether it's moving up vertically in your own industry, you're going to be met with barriers, crucibles, testing grounds, battlegrounds, invisible barriers of fear. But when you show up confident and bring along your competence, because every day during this pandemic, what you've been doing is learning, growing, feeling the fear, feeling the uncertainty. Yes, sitting on the couch. Some of us drinking wine and cheese, gaining about 20 pounds, then going to the gym and saying, what did I do? But you have. We've all felt that. We've all felt the uncertainty. And the only way to come out of that is through the resolve of resilience and the vision that there's got to be more, and that ember we talked about that has to be stoked into something more than a flame that is going out. We all crave something greater than ourselves. We do. It might be in a latent, dormant form, but it is there. You will find a way when you open your mind and think and ask those questions that fear would deny or delude. Here's how the brain works. And this is the most important thing I learned in writing 2 books. I learned that it wasn't my fault. I learned that our brain, the primary function of the brain is to keep us safe. We think it's to think, it's not. The primary function of our brain is to keep us safe, and everything else it does from that dominant thing is to protect us, is to keep us from thinking, is to keep us from expending too many calories. Because the brain believes, right, in its own way, or feels, that if we expend calories, we're going to perish. And critical thinking burns calories. Just to turn your brain on every day and do this is about 1,200 calories. Brain feels like it's no, stop. So most of the time as you drive home, you walk out of here, or you do something at work, you're in a state of rote, where you're really moving through an unconscious state and just doing tasks. That's the way your brain is set up. Now, to work with the brain, you have to first understand the throes of instinct. Fear is instinctive. It wants to protect you. So to keep you from doing things, don't push, don't go out there, don't try for this job, don't learn this, stay back, don't do. When we can feel, and we can actually start to think, that prefrontal cortex of our brain is the CEO rational brain, where we can ask the questions, what if? And the most important question of how. When you start to ask what if and how, your brain is searching for answers. It starts to search for those things that it compels you to do. And that is the way that you begin your movement always forward. Leadership sounds like it's something that is bestowed upon a person based on title. It's not. Leadership is earned when you have followers, when you have people who walk behind or side by side, who you develop into tomorrow's future leaders. Leadership compels you to listen. When you listen, you can learn. When you listen to a person, you can learn from a person. You have an obligation then to do something about that which you've now learned. So during this pandemic, the first thing I did was to ask the people in my company, this is what's going on, this is what I know, what do you think we should do? Marcus Aurelius was probably the greatest of all Roman emperors. He was great because he was able to see the blind spots. He was able to put his own ego to the side. It's a very tough thing for people to do. And he was able to say, let me get a council of people. Let me get this council to advise me, and then let me take a step back and let me think about what we should do. And when I did that, I had different ideas. I had ideas way beyond my ability. I had creativity. I had people who gave me their fears, and I was entrusted to take care of that because I knew this, and you know this, and you've lived through this. If a person fears, they can't take care of your clients. They can't take care of your customer. They can't do those things they have to do in a professional engagement because they're too concerned with their own welfare. The brain is bringing them back. The brain is bringing them to a place of paralysis. So I tried, as you've tried, to give them a known. And sometimes the known sounds like this. I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. I am going to be honest. I'm going to be transparent. Don't know. but I do know that I am going to do this. We're going to go off campus. We're going to go virtual. This is what I expect. And we're going to jump on Zoom calls until we all have Zoom fatigue. But I want you to take care of our clients in this way, and I will take care of you. And every check-in call we did, which was every week, I would give the updates on what I knew. That bonded us together. We didn't lose one employee. We stayed together, and we moved forward together. We're faced now with a different challenge. We're faced with a hybrid state. And the one thing an intractable, inflexible, dominant, I think, out front leader has to do is change some of that thinking in order to maintain some of that talent. Toughest thing we'll have to do. You know, my thing was to walk around and look, and if I saw that was good, because I want to make sure that I'm in the game, much like some of the great, great coaches of all time, which I'm not, but I think that if I can get in there and help and kick things around and come on, let's go, that things were going to be better if I could see it. But you know what? Things were really good, and I couldn't see it. So I had to change. I had to be flexible. Do I always like it? No. But it is working right now. Listen, learn, and then have this one major, I think, trait, tool, and strength that you can use, and you probably use every day, and that's called empathy. Oh, I'm friends with a professor who teaches at Columbia, and he teaches engineers who get to the top of their game. They're out in the world, and they're coming to night school, and most of them say, you know what, I got to a certain point, man, I can't crack the next level of code. I can't get to that next level. And he teaches them to be more emotionally aware. How they enter a room. Are they confident? Do they shake hands? Do they look in the eye? Are they really, truly engaged? Are they too concerned with themselves and their position and their title, or are they concerned about helping others pull through? Are they going side by side with them? Are they addressing things they don't know and being honest and telling them they don't know? Are they seeking counsel like Marcus Aurelius? Are they doing those things with others to show that they're human? And that's the way to crack into that next level, but it takes courage. And for us to face fear is evolution. It is an evolution, not a revolution. We don't get a major boom, revolve, I'm going to become. Becoming is a process. We don't enter or exit from a cocoon. But we can evolve if we face fear on its terms. Don't deny it, face it. You can't pull it out and beat it up. Wish I could, can't. It's part of us. But when you do that, what evolves? Character and courage for the next thing. And you find out that didn't kill me. And you find out that suffering is a part of life. And when you find out that from suffering, character evolves to make us grow stronger, we're ready to take on the challenges that this thing called life will present. Being aware, learning, having empathy and engagement with your people is a gift. You have a gift every day to influence minds, and some, I understand, you can't change. Nor would you want to, but you can win the hearts if you're consistent and you're listening and you're doing those things with empathy. That makes people feel safe, and we need to feel safe. I will tell you this, intellectual honesty, there is no such thing as security. There's not. You know that. On the intellectual level, you know that. There is no such thing as safe. But there is such a thing as more valuable, recession-proof, build your skill set, do those things that may be uncomfortable, that may have 4 letters called work, and become more valuable to myself, and then thereby more valuable to others. That is learning something every day. That is leaning into this thing we call discomfort. That is getting off the couch, getting in the game, and meeting with people, getting rejected, getting beat down, but getting back up stronger, getting back up more confident, having that indelible belief in the self. The indelible belief that if it's to be, it's up to me. That's ownership. And you know what? A whole lot of people don't want accountability. They don't want accountability at the point of contact because they don't want to own the result. If you don't own the result in your life, you will always be a passenger. Always. And you know what happens to passengers? They get dropped off. You want to be able to drive your life forward and own your life to the degree you can, given the constraints of society, to live your life on your terms. Just think about that for a minute. If you could really live your life on your terms, what would that feel like? Man, that's not a thought, that's a feel. So yeah, you know, I started out, slammed down, hung up on, and I lost my first 13 times in sales. Got out of this brown oxidized station wagon, no hubcaps, and no one wanted to buy from me. I was reciting everything off this course that Liberty Mutual taught me. Everything was a pivot. Everything was a direction. Every answer, every question. It wasn't human. And what we're doing today is living. And to live and to embrace is to be human. And to be human means that we're not perfect. So I had to give up the illusion of perfect, the illusion that there was something that was going to work, because the only thing that could work was me. And I learned just to leave that stuff in the car. And then I learned to meet people as people and ask them where they're from and really care about it. And then tell them if I could help them or not. And if I didn't think I could, I wouldn't. And every time I thought I could and I couldn't, I whipped out my wallet and I paid for it. And I built my credibility by doing that, and I built a company based on those principles. I built a company based on the character of who we are, based on testimonials from clients who would say, these people say and do, and they do everything they say. And I learned that in your life, the activity you have from the first thing in the morning to the end of night is going to dictate to a large degree where that needle moves in your life. Activity is going to rule your success. I learned that on my first day on the job. There was a small ruler in the desk. It said activity rules success. The person that had that ruler before me was fired because they didn't have enough activity toward a directed result. You see, the most important thing is, do you know what you want? Do you know what you want now? Things could change, but do you know what you want? When you know what you want, you're building a bridge from where you are to how you get to what you need, to what you want. And that bridge is found and built step by step. From doing those small things every day, those small things, getting engaged, doing one more thing, taking that rejection, reading more, learning more, having that insatiable curiosity, and applying what you learn for the intended results. You know, when I wrote my first book, the editor said, I know what you're going to write on. You're going to write about fear. And I said, there's no way. I ain't writing about fear. It's not glamorous enough. It doesn't have enough flash to it. I don't want to write it. He said, look, he said, take a look around your office. He said, you got a lot of people here, but how many people are actually doing what they're paid to do? And how many people are making files and avoiding what it is that they need to do? It's fear. And once you learn that fear has its tentacles in each one of us, you start to learn how to move through its debilitating effects. That was one of the keys that I learned in a resilient way forward. As I mentored with an environment that I tried to make as free from the tentacles of fear as I could. You see, where you work is an environment. Your home front is an environment. Whether it's boardroom to living room, you're creating an environment. Does that environment that you have, is that fear-based? Is that based on penalties for failure? Not failure, that's ethics, but based on failure for attempts? Now, there's thinking errors. You can only make so many mistakes from not thinking. That's a critical error. But I learned to create an environment where people were encouraged to fail forward, where people learned that they had to get out and try. Let me tell you why. Because as an owner of a company, on the day you learn that you don't own the company, it owns you, you will be free. When you learn that you are the employee, not the employer, you will be liberated. And when I learned that if I didn't want to work when I was on vacation in Australia and get that call at 3 a.m., and if I didn't want to get involved in ordering pencils and cups, then I had to give up some stock and give up some money and give up some power. And I was willing to do all that to get the one thing that I couldn't get back, that's time, and to get back that freedom, and to get back the ability to do those things that I'm doing right now. I want to share this with you. I am not a consultant. I'm an active player, a participant in this game of business. And I love it every day because it's different. And I love the challenge that it brings. And 99% of those challenges are human. We all have those fears. And the only way I found in 20 years of study to move through them is to face and do it. And by repetition, you would learn. And that was part of growing resilience. Let's give resilience its due. It is not you coming back to form where you were before, or snapping back in some way to say, man, you can bounce, let's go. It's not. It's a different iteration of you. It is the ability to overcome those obstacles, those hurdles, those limits, and to keep going after it. And sometimes it's a dip, and sometimes it's a knee, and sometimes you get hit and you go backwards, but the way is always forward. And building resilience is done one brick, one stone at a time, just like Rome. You know, when Caesar changed the Roman Republic into the Roman Empire, he did some things that translate across boardrooms in business and in life today. The first thing he did was to stand at the banks of this a very tiny stream. They're called the Rubicon, about the size of this room. Now, he knew that any standing army in Rome that dared to cross and enter into the Senate was subject by treason and summary death. You could not take weapons into Rome. That's where the guys in togas made the rules to keep them safe. Well, Caesar, after 7 years of blood, mud-caked battle in Gaul, which is recent France, stood on those banks and thought. And then he did something that's probably changed the entire course of Western civilization. When that first hoof hit the water, when that first sandal immersed in that stream, Rome changed from the Republic to the Empire, and our life today is better for it. Now, it didn't end well for him, but he did that thing that was ultimate commitment, and that was crossing the Rubicon. So when you hear someone say, have you crossed the Rubicon, that means, have you made that ultimate decision to get off that dock in life of comfort, get on that boat of opportunity, and cross and go all in? That's the biggest thing we look for today, is have you made that commitment to go all in? You see, I interview 100 people a year for prospective jobs, and everyone has the same story. So what does that story look like? It looks the same. But only a few will actually make that crossing. Only a few will actually do what the ancients did and burn their boats behind them. No retreat, no plan B, no surrender. And that means going through fear, becoming resistant, resilient to that rejection and the fears that pock most of our lives. Those are the things that will bring us to another plane. I am passionate, I am convicted about this because I've done it, I feel it, and I want to share it. So what I do today is create that environment for people in the company, not my company, the company to grow, to help them grow, for me to become redundant, for me not to be known as the CEO, but to be known as one who could bring them along and help them grow. And that is my kick. What's yours? Why do you get out of bed? Why do you do it? You know, all of us in our first job have to meet basic requirements. We all do. We have to pay the rent. We have certain bills we got to pay. That's a job. And maybe most of our existence is in a cubicle, it's 9x5, and that's all we want to do, and that's all we can do, and that is a thing that we all need, and we all need people to help us at that level. It's fundamentals, we need it. But if you find the passion, the fire in your industry, and you're willing to do those things to grow the confidence, and then take your steps through those fears to become resilient to rejection, wow, things start to change because that's called career. And from career, you can then forge those things called opportunities. And from opportunities, you're creating the ultimate thing for yourself, and that's legacy. You know, I have a podcast called The Unstoppables. And I ask these questions on every podcast, from CEOs of Fortune 500 companies to Navy SEALs. And I ask this question on success, and I want you to think about this. How do you define success? In your terms, not the dictionary. How do you define it? Because that's going to define what you're willing to do in life. How do you define success? What was your biggest failure? And what did you learn from it? What was your defining moment? On defining moment, most people talk about family. On failure, most people talk about setback. On success, most people talk about contribution. But at the end, there's one paragraph. And I want you to think about this paragraph. And I want you to think about writing this paragraph now. If you've lived on this earth for 150 years and it's time to finally exit, what's that one paragraph you would leave for others to learn from, to grow from, that you could share from the grave so it would limit those mistakes that they make, staunch that level of blood flow and heartache and pain? What would that paragraph look like? You see, that's legacy, that's sharing, that's collaborating, that is a human core need, and those are the things we work for today. If you work for that, you're living a life of purpose. You're living that passionate pursuit of what the Greeks would call excellence. And so many people come to me and say, Bill, I've made all this money. Where's my happiness? You've probably learned this by now. It's mutually exclusive. Happiness doesn't come from the external. There's always someone with more. There's always someone that's going to be bigger, better, faster, better looking. I know, hard to believe. But there is. It's an internal feeling, and you have to write your own and feel your own, of what it is that you can express right now. And I come back to this thing on time. This is the time. And I know it sounds like every other thing you've heard about it, but I don't fancy myself to be much of a motivational speaker. I just think that I'm living this life, and I'm going through life, and I've seen people that have risen and challenged themselves and have just burst through the door, and I've seen others that have withdrawn from the field of contact and said, you know, it's just good enough. And inside of me, and this is where we might diverge, good enough never is. The pursuit of perfection is a folly, and good is the only champion we can have, and good is the only outcome we can have. But to accept less than you can be is something that will probably not play well as your last paragraph. You know, I learned this, and I used this on one of my 3 Steve Harvey episodes, and I was called to talk about that book on failure. And on the first talk, I talked to a woman who was going through another failed marriage, who had no job, and had kids in her previous marriage that she had to try to support, but she couldn't find anything. And so my encouragement to her was to try to find something, to try to find that one rock, to try to find that one brick that she could build back with, to get rid of the excuse that was the past, to get rid of those conditions of the past, to yes, feel the fear. You're going to fear. You're going to fear. But what could she lose if she went forward and maybe took that first job, no matter what it was, and then grow out of that? And I learned this through those shows. I learned that for most of us, we are very secure in looking through our rearview mirror and thinking it's going to happen to us when we look front, when we look forward, when we look through the big mirror. And you know what happens, my friends? If you keep looking through that back, you keep looking through that small window, you're going to miss the beauty, you're going to miss the joy of the drive, and you're probably going to miss a turn, you're probably going to crash somewhere. And we also have to be able, when we're ready, to be able to jump off that dock that is comfort and enter into the unknown that is opportunity. And it comes because we're resilient. We're resourceful. We've done those things that we can lean on that have made us stronger. Everyone in this room is stronger for what you've gone through. For me, leadership was to make people feel as safe as I could so they could express themselves to help the enterprise grow. Now, if they helped the company grow, it helped them feed their families. So that circle that we've provided from making them feel safe, taking a step as a company to say, this is what we're going to do for you, here's what's going to happen, giving them some degree of known, was going to help them through the unknown, because we were going to be there for the next paycheck and the paycheck after, and we were going to keep supporting their family. That is how it works. But if and only if they were able to do the work, to keep doing the work without the fear that the company that provided for their income was gone. That didn't happen. They became resilient. They found a way. They made a way. That was one of the keys in our ability to move forward. You know, I learned this in school. You've learned this every day on the job you do. Deadlines and discipline generally win the day. If you can work off deadline and you can create the discipline it takes to get there, do the work, think, and then do without a whole lot of time between, you're probably going to move that needle. You're probably going to do something that makes a difference in your life. And by doing so, you will make a difference in the lives of others. Here's something on deadline. Deadline is a Civil War term. It came from a prison in the Civil War. And there was a bunch of reporters that came around, and there was all this circle around there. It was all beat down. There was no grass. So the reporters said to the guards, man, what's that circle there? And they said, that's a deadline. You escape, you get to that point, we shoot you. And so newspapers scribbled that right down, so I found that's a deadline. Those people in life, in business, that can make their own deadlines, that can say, this is when we're going to do this. No, the dog didn't eat your homework, no excuses, get this done, and have the discipline to drive through that, will generally make a difference in life. But this is about you. This is about what you want. No matter what that level is, there's enrichment, there is purpose, there is passion behind everything you do when you do it to the very best of your ability. I coach it, I live it, I believe it. And I think that your ability to be resilient is a choice. Remember, wishing and hoping is not a decision. And only action makes that choice reality. Only action. I know that people work with people, deal with people that are like them, that want to be like them, or people who have an interest in them, to help them improve their lives. You don't do things for me and you won't do things for others. You do things first for you, but that's your selfish gene. And I know the best way to express myself with people is to become part of their entire experience, is to become that person who connects with another and is very transparent about agenda and motive. That takes courage. That takes a move through fear. That takes some failure on my part. You know, I learned this, as most of you have, about weakness and about failure. You can't be all things to all people. And I know what I'm not very good at. And I try to the best of my ability to bring people into my employ who are very good at things I can't do, and step away from that. That is part of learning who you are, what you can do, what you can't do. That is part of me. That is a part of this thing called life. Now, those Dallas Cowboy fans can come back in the room at this point. They can all come right back in. You know, I want to tell you something about negotiation as well, because I think this is all part of what we learn along this journey. I learned these steps in life. I learned that my activity level and your activity level is going to a large degree influence what happens to you in life. Is your activity directed toward what you need to do to feed your family, to move the needle in your career, to help yourself grow? So what is that activity level? What does it look like? And how much of that do you have to do to really make a difference in your life? And the other thing is this, and if you take this down and if you live this and you really try to live this, it will make a difference in your life. Think and then do. Think and do. You know, I was at my first company, and the president came out to me one day and said, you know what the difference is between you and everybody else? He said, you have a very short span between when you think something and when you do something, so I want you to think about this. If you can think and then do, and there's a short distance between that decisive thought and its action, you probably have a shot, and a better opportunity over someone who keeps thinking but never does, waiting for perfection that never comes, and sitting over here without ever doing. The brash person is much like the Western story of Custer, who didn't think and just did. But when you think and you do, when you think about, I want to call Sally, I should do this, I should fill out this form, I should make this call, I should do this, and you do it, you start to change the entire dynamic of your life, that think and do. And the other thing I learned that was probably most important is walk-away power. There are certain positions in life where you need to say no. You need to be able to place a value on that thing we call time, and to be able to step away, walk-away power, and not negotiate by giving away that most precious commodity, by giving away your time, by giving away your money, and be able to step back. You'll learn to bounce from that. That's part of resilience. That's one of the most important things that I've learned in life. And as an organization of people that you listen and care for, that you engage with, every day they're watching you. They are watching you. I will tell you what leaders are known for. You are known much more for what you tolerate than what you ever build, than what you ever accomplish. Your culture is being defined every minute by your emotional bandwidth, how you enter the room, how you treat people. Are they disparate? Are they similar? Are you consistent from word to deed? That's your culture. That's how you're known. That's the degree of leadership. That's how people know who and what. One of the Navy SEALs on my program talked about the most important thing that got him through battle, and he was engaged heavily in battle, and he talked about getting out of that emotional field. That emotional field is fear, which we all feel, but the emotional field will kill you in battle. He said, Bill, you got to stay between those 6 inches between your ears. You got to stay in your brain. You got to stay logical. So when those changes, those fears come, you're prepared, because you're out of the emotion and back into the logic, the rational part of your brain, which is the place we have to examine to understand what we need to do to move through times like the pandemic. Because what you're preparing for is tomorrow and the next day. And you either prepare for that by becoming more resilient and more resourceful. That means working with others to learn and grow and share and cooperate. The alternative is not good. There is only one way. It's always forward. Nature will abhor a vacuum. Nature will not allow it. Someone will step in and do those things. And if I don't care for my coworkers, someone else will. Someone will provide that standard. Do I lose some? Yes. Yes. You can't be all things to all people. But to me, resilience has been the most formidable key. From the snow I shoveled in Pennsylvania, to the factory I worked in, to the F's I used to get in math, to the learned belief in the self that when I entered a room with people, that I was going to engage with them and I was going to give them my version of the truth, give them what I know, and give them the limits of my ability to know other things other than that, and bring people in much better than me to do those things. That is a part of what I've done. It's a part of what you need to do to win this game of life. Now, we're closing in on the stage where I'm going to ask some questions and let you ask me whatever you'd like, because I think we'll get a little more granular if we do that. We can get down into the nitty-gritty of the hows if you'd like. Are there any questions that you'd like to ask me? Yeah, I'll let you look that up. No, look it up. Okay, I can't remember if it's 40 or 10. Mine's probably 10, but the brain's got only so much wattage of power, like if it's a light bulb. I think, well, I don't know if it's 40. But you look this up. The caloric burn for the normal person just to get up and run this computer up here is about 12 to 1,500 calories. So, okay. So the brain, number one function is to keep itself alive, is to survive. So if you think, it goes back to the days where we had to really forage for our food. We didn't know what we were going to eat. We couldn't go to a grocery. We couldn't call Amazon Fresh. It was an animal, or it was some kind of foraging, right? So we didn't know. So right here in this part of our adipose, which I can't really button this anymore like I used to, but over right here, we tend to store it. And so the more we're away from food, we start to slow down. So most people that are on diets, they lose 5-6 pounds real fast. That's water. But then the body's metabolism starts to slow down because the brain's saying, wait a minute, preserve those calories because you might not get another meal for a long, long time. That's what's happening. And it is about 12 to 1,500. So if you think about that in terms of the motion, the always forward motion you have to do to start to lose weight, and then all the couch potato stuff that I did while I laid around during the pandemic, which is a whole lot of couch potato stuff with a whole lot of cheese and stuff. Whoa, baby. I mean, I didn't want to live my life on a treadmill because that's like you ever hear about the hedonic treadmill? That's like you're always chasing the neighbor. You're going to be happy when? You're going to be happy if. The root cause is of unhappiness or if and when. I'm going to be happy if, I'm going to be happy when. You're on a treadmill, man. You might lose a lot of calories, but you're not getting anywhere. But that's, man, I tell you, that's a blow-away idea right there, but it's true. And the brain also is trying to keep you safe. It doesn't want you to stick out there. So every time you want to do something, have a rejection, you all think all the eyes are on you. So public speaking is the number one thing you hate to do because you feel like everybody's undressing you and looking at you and go, oh man, it really stinks. But it's just, you learn that in school. You don't want to raise your hand because you stick out. You stick out, guess what happens? In long time ago days, if you stuck out of the crowd, you were ostracized, you were cut out. So then you were subject to death from a saber-toothed tiger a long time ago. And we still carry the vestiges of that. That's what we do when we fear. We're going way back to our ancestors. We're carrying that stuff that helped us survive because fear is an early warning system for us to help to survive. Without it, we wouldn't be alive. It's a good question. It's one I could answer. Might not be able to answer the next one, don't know. Pardon me?
Staff meetings, about staff meetings.
Yeah.
You talked early on about sharing with your team what's going on and getting a plan together. What is your position on, in this era, what we're doing when things are still changing rapidly as to how often you should have staff meetings and what should be the core of those meetings so that people can retain what's being offered, share, and move forward and execute?
That's an excellent question, and that has about 9 different answers, but I'm going to give you the first one as an example. I dealt with the head of AIG, which was a Fortune 20 company at the time. This person, his name was Hank Greenberg. He was the king of the 10-minute meeting. He had them every quarter with the staff. You know what he asked them? Where are you to plan? Okay, there it is. How do you plan to improve? And what are you going to do next quarter? That was it. I hate meetings. Let me say that, first of all, I hate meetings. I think they're a time suck, but I think they're very important in a 15-minute agenda-driven meeting where everyone gets a chance to participate, not just one person speak, and the rest, the people that really have the great ideas, don't say anything. We have more meetings in my office. People bring in donuts. People bring in all that stuff. And my company sits around for 2 hours and there's no agenda. So number one, have an agenda. Number two, make it a fluid agenda. Make it an agenda that your staff, the areas you need to talk about, put a time limit on what it is you want to talk about and who's going to address those issues, and then walk away with this. Who's going to do what after the meeting? What's our follow-up at the next meeting? And it doesn't matter if it's a week. I have them every week. It could be a month, every month, but there's got to be a follow-up that's got to be followed up on before the next meeting. The agenda has to be clear. It should be one where people have input into it, and it should be one where people participate, and here it is again, they're free to express their opinions. Now, obviously, you're going to think, man, Sally's making fun of my ideas. They're really stupid. We need those ideas. Did that help? I'm on that stuff because, number one, a productive meeting, everybody's involved. It's not too big. It's time sensitive. You got an agenda. You're following on the agenda. You're not digressing into all the BS stuff that's fluff, and people will do that. And one person's going to talk because they want the raise. No, I get it. And the really great ones who have the great ideas, they don't want to talk because they have the greater ideas, but then they'll be ostracized. They'll be cut out from that crowd. Oh my God, here comes the saber-toothed tiger. There ain't one jumping in the conference room. And that's a good meeting. And it's got to have a point. Man, you don't know how much money I lose in those meetings. Holy glory. And they don't talk about it. And guess what happens? They walk out of there, and no one knows what happened. Hey, should I go here? Well, that was in the meeting. That was in the last two meetings. Oh, I didn't get it. Well, you should have stayed awake. And here's the thing that people do in my meetings. You want to know what they do? You're not probably doing this here. I know you don't do this. Okay, 7 seconds. Where am I going to get my hair done? What am I going to eat tonight? How long is this guy going to go? And can I get a donut or something after this? That's what my company does to me. They're just so they just want to hear if I'm going to pay for pizza on a Friday. That's it. If they pay attention at the end, I'll buy them pizza. If they don't, no pizza. All right, any other questions?
We get you to share your paragraph.
Wow. You know, when Jude hired me, I told him I was going to come up like this former Pittsburgh Pirate guy, and sometimes this big pirate guy would hit a home run that they could never catch. I mean, in the ocean, right? Well, not ocean, but in the water. Around the Dodger Stadium, he's the only one to hit two. And sometimes he strike out. I will tell you part of it. That's a great question. So I haven't really worked it through, although I've heard maybe 3,000 of them. I will tell you the one thing I would want for you, and this is what I learned. When I went to Australia in the 20th year of my company's progression, I say, I thought I wanted to get out. I thought, it's enough, man. I've done everything I wanted to do. I've done all these material things that I wanted. I've done all that stuff. And I just need to just take and live my life and just travel or do whatever I want. I don't want to be on the clock anymore. I don't want to be on those deadlines. I don't want to be in those freaking meetings. I don't want to do that stuff anymore. And so I sat there by myself. I went for 2 weeks, and I looked down the street, and there was this statement by Jack London, and it said that I would rather burn out like a meteor than just crumble away like dry rot. And I went, man, do I want to live the rest of my life with regret if I still have something in the tank? And so I went back and I found that I do have something in the tank. And I found that in my studies that 90% of people in a hospice, and I did a talk for a hospice center in Maine, that 90% of people in a hospice group had regret for things that they didn't do, not that they did. So I came back and I started doing this, started doing a lot more of this, and started doing a lot more things in the company, and changed the dynamic of me in sharing. I would like to be known as, he was a mentor, he cared about people, and he always did his best. And don't try for perfect, just get out and try. And take the small steps, much like the Ethiopian proverb, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And don't get over your skis. Control your ego. Your ego can be your champion or it can be your biggest detriment. And don't do harm to your body. I push this body in ways and forms and things that probably have me a lot older than my chronological age, I would take care of my body a lot better than I did. But that's a good one for me to think about. That really wasn't quite the great answer. But that's part of that's my answer. I want to tell you something about ego for a minute since we touched on it. I want you to remember this about ego. I learned this in dealing with tons of salespeople, that ego with talent is perceived by people as confidence. And man, I want to tell you something. If you grow nothing else, there it is, confidence. But it's got to have a level of talent with it, competence with it. And ego without talent, you've all been exposed to this, is known to be arrogance. Arrogance doesn't win the room, arrogance doesn't win the heart, arrogance sure as heck closes off the mind. And I've learned that about controlling ego. And I learned that I had to be this one driver who had to do everything. And then when I learned that it wasn't about me, it was about other people and sharing and pulling back and not having to take all that money off the table anymore and giving it out to others who could do those things that would give me time, I was free. And to me, I work for one thing. Oxymoron as it may seem, I work for freedom. I work for freedom. You gotta ask me one more question. That was a good question. Man, you guys, for a morning crowd or afternoon, oh, it's gonna be in the back. Now you're straining my ears.
Hi, well, they handed me a microphone, so I would like to go back to what you were talking about your energy and your emotional bandwidth and your culture being defined by how you enter a room and that emotional bandwidth. I think probably everybody in this room is emotionally exhausted. And so what strategies would you recommend to focus on the culture and focus on your employees when you are beyond your bandwidth?
And you know what? And we are all, thank you, we are all fatigued to the point where I'm in my car at work before I walk into the office and my shoulders will be like this, but I have one thing to do that day. I have to get back, I have to walk forward, and I have to do one of the most important things, and I'm able to do this because of the proximity of the office. It's only about 13,000 square feet in this location. I walk into everybody's office and I will stand at the door during this pandemic, but I will ask them how they're doing. I won't ask them about work. I'll take a personal interest in that person and not ask them anything about work. So I've been able to do that because people are watching me, and I'll give you an example. When you walk into an office, and let's say it's Joe's birthday. Joe, happy birthday. 3 months later, it's Sue's birthday, but you don't say happy birthday in quite the same way. Oh man, he likes Joe better than me. People read that emotion. Oh, they absolutely do. And they don't, if you don't look them in the eye and say something, and I'll tell you when I'm really good looking, I'm a lot taller, I'm a lot smarter. You want to know when it is? Around raise time. When it's time in the company for the reviews and the raises, man, I'm like Superman. I'm like, woo, all right? I'm Terry Bradshaw when he was good, but after that, that's just Bill. So I have to comport myself, not express my anger, sadness, or uncertainty in front of my coworkers because they are looking to me to be in that chair for one thing, strength and certainty. They need certainty. Yes, he is here. The axis of our existence corporately is good. But I will go in their office, I will greet them in the hallways, I will talk to them about what's up with them personally, I will get involved in that. And that is the way that I've been able to draw energy from them and to give them my energy. And I'll tell you the other thing is this, you gotta be able to take a knee, get some white space, get away from the action. If you don't get some space for you, a French philosopher says there's one big fear we have, to be alone in a room with our thoughts. That's man's biggest fear. It is, but you've got to be able to channel that into what's the threat, now what's the opportunity. So I have to read deeply from some philosophy, which I do. I have to think about and have gratitude for that day that I can walk in that company and see those people and make that difference and believe to my core that I do. And that gives me a power because I have to be that. That's an obligation I have to them. It's an obligation I have to me. If I don't do that, I will fire myself. That's a great four great questions. Who fed you those questions? Sounds like somebody on my staff.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Lillian Hawkins from Martin Luther King County District Court in Washington State. And my question is, you talked about that you bring in people that are good at what you're not good at, and you step back and you let them do your thing. So how did you get to that point to acknowledge what you're not good at, and also how can you influence others on your team to do the same?
Love that one. I missed that one. When I was in high school, one of the reasons I didn't want to go any further is I couldn't get by math. I can't add 1 and 1 unless I have a calculator. I was terrible at math. So my mother used to bring me up to get extra tutoring, and I got a D- in algebra. I still have that report card. And so I just thought, I just can't do math. And no matter how much I try, and no matter how hard I try, I couldn't do math. So when I went to school, I got a chance to learn. I started to learn about how to connect with people in terms of communication. And I started to grow the strength of communication, of learning words, of learning positioning to win, of learning certain things that would be very important to me in my field. In my field, and it is all of your fields, you don't know this yet maybe, but it's selling. You're selling every day. You're selling yourself at home. You're selling, I'm going to go on a date. Who's taking care of the kids? How are we going to do this? How do I look? Am I going to get a raise? I'm positioning myself to win here. You're always selling. You don't, but to sell, I had to win the heart of a person. Now, there's a lot of math involved in some of those numbers. So here's what I say now. If you can sell really, really well, you can hire a whole lot of people to do your math. So I knew up front that was something I couldn't do. I took myself out of that position of failure, and I did enough to ask my employer, I am not good at math. I need someone to help me. Will you fund this with me? And if you fund it with me, I will pay you part of what I sell. He said, I've never heard anybody say what they give me. They only tell me what they want. And I did that, and I grew a company from there. You've got to know that. You've got to look in the mirror without denial and delusion. You've got to look in there in the morning. You've got to look in there when you're doing your hair. You've got to look in there when you shave. And you got to say, no denial, no delusion, know thyself. That is not only Socratic, it is wise. And from know thyself, you need to be true to yourself. Where you are bad at something, ask for help. But you know what? We don't want to do it. We don't expose ourselves. So my encouragement to you is to get those people that can help you as you can help them. The people that can do math, they can't sell. Harmony. But that's life. And so I would tell you something you might really hate me for, but I'm going to tell you. Don't try to work on your weakness and bring up the weakness if it not, unless it's character. Don't try to bring up that skill. Maximize your other skills. Maximize the stuff you're really good at. Nature won't make that void empty for too long. It'll fill it with people that can help you. Energy, enthusiasm, a caring for people. You'll find people that help you do your math. I did. And it worked. But you got to be able to get out of your own way. But see, here's what we want to do. We want to be more valuable. So we want to do everything. Guess up. We start messing things up really bad. And that's my job, is put people in the right position to win. And those people that can't do those things, to get them off that line and put them somewhere where they can to maximize their talent. That is something I paid a heavy price to learn. I pay a lot of money to learn what I've taught you or tried to enroll and share with you today. A lot of money doing it the wrong way. That kind of help. There's, and again, with everything, there's no one size fits all. It's up to you. You can say, this guy up here is talking other stuff. It is my passion, my purpose to do this because I love doing it. And if you could just take that one thing and question it, even if it's something that's just BS. But if you look it up and you think, well, maybe that 1,200 calories isn't so much BS. Maybe it's 15. Or maybe those meetings could be done a little better. It's all part about you maximizing time, becoming more resilient, and going through life and enjoying more the hugs, the embraces, the smiles for those things, those people you love. That's it, man. That's it. Any other fastballs for me? I expected one from you. I'm disappointed. The expectation bar was right here. Now it's down.
So I have one. This morning I was listening to a program and I heard a terminology that I've not heard before, which really put a name on something which has been happening for the last several months, and probably it's been hitting everybody in this room, and it's called the Big Resignation. And I think it is absolutely happening in our court, and it's happening all over the place in all sorts of industries. And anybody who's been in this hotel for any length of time over the last couple of days knows what I'm talking about. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts on this. I mean, some of the things that the speakers were talking about this morning on this program I was listening to was saying it's actually been starting a couple of decades ago, but it's hit, like the wave has just hit huge for all these things that all came together over the last year. And I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
No. You know, I was talking to Matthew, lives in Columbus, now he's over there, and formerly from Michigan, right? Yeah. Okay. We were talking about the most draining thing there is in companies is trying to refill those slots from people who resign. And it's a drain, and it's like you're on a treadmill, and you keep doing the same thing and the same thing. But recruitment is our lifeblood. And we've got to be able to have something that we sell or that we position people for that makes something and makes a difference to them. So when I hire people, I bring them in and show them job, show them career, show them opportunity, and say, this is here for you. The job is here, it's on me. But now for you to grow beyond that is on you. If you find the value in doing this thing, and this thing feeds you, and it feeds you in a way that's not only material, but in a way that's intrinsic, that gives you a deep satisfaction for what you do, you'll stay. If I make it that place that's got an incentive plan and it's fair, for the most part. But we're going to lose people. There's an attrition rate. You're right. It's very high, and now it's sparked probably a bigger exodus from the boardrooms, because why would you have to really do those 4 letters called work at a certain place? And there's always a shiny object out there. Millennials love that shiny object, and they want it right now. I'm mentoring a student in college. He said, Bill, why should I stay in school? I know where I want to go. I want to go over here. But you're right here. You don't have the framework for your bridge. You haven't built the resilience. You haven't learned, you haven't done these things. I'm not talking about the gold watch weight, but you gotta have a couple of bricks before you put mortar to it. That's a good point. I don't know. I just have to deal with that one. That's part of being resilient. I gotta deal with it. You know, for your next speaker, you need some WD-40, okay? Is this a trap door? Is this where, like, if I don't do good, you push the thing? It's like, whoa! There he goes, man. He's done. Hook me off. Throw a tomato. As we out of time, or we? Oh man, I could just do this all day. Oh, I got another session to go to. By the way, it's going to be one of these sessions over, right? So I got to do this again. Speaking of now you warmed me up. I'm all ready to go now. I want to thank you again for your time. Seriously, I mean that with gratitude. I know the value of time. I know it very, very well. I'm very intimately familiar with the essence of life, and having lived as long as I have, and losing loved ones along the way. You realize how short and evanescent this really is. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.